With Dark X-Men's finale only 2 issues away, today's issue teases whether or not Havok truly died in the previous issue, and in that, giving us an idea as to what we can expect from Steve Foxe's upcoming Dead X-Men. What is up, Earth's mighty subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about Dark X-Men number 3, written by Steve Foxe with art by Jonas Scharf and color by Frank Martin. So in this issue, we finally get more of a confirmation of who the mutant that Maddie and her Dark X-Men were seeking out. We got a look at the character, but honestly, I didn't recollect the character until I actually got to see her in this issue, and then it was like, oh, of course it's this character, and it was a character I had completely forgotten about, and that character is none other than Marisol Guerra, aka Flourish. As you might imagine, just based on what we see in this issue, her power is chlorokinesis, not unlike Apocalypse's estranged wife, Genesis, albeit she's not an Omega level mutant when it comes to this power set. And she also has a very glaring weakness that Genesis does not have, and it's that when she's in a good mood, the flora that she can create tends to be things like flowers and trees and grass and very pretty things. And when she's in a bad mood, typically angry or afraid, that is when she starts creating dangerous things like fungus and spores and all kinds of other crazy stuff. And that's what happens in this issue, is that she's wary of the Dark X-Men just based on the fact that a lot of them are people who used to be bad guys. And while not all of that is true for a lot of them, it is true for Maddie and Azazel as well as Implate and other characters. I like the idea that in this, she's maintaining the same energy she's had since we last saw her in the 2014 Storm solo series, which is actually where she debuted. And it's also kind of why I slick forgot about her, because she only appeared in those 6 issues and then she was gone after that. I mean, while she wasn't the most major of players even in that series, she was there enough. You would at the very least know who she was, but I mean, once again, after that series, she was never seen or heard from again. As a matter of fact, she had only 6 appearances in her publication history going back to 2014 up until Dark X-Men number 2. She had never been seen again after that Storm series. So yeah, it was a nice touch. I liked it. I like that everyone at the X office is going back into all these old comics and pulling out characters that people don't talk about. And even more specifically, I like that they did it with Marisol, but because for her, she is a Mexican character, and we don't really get to see a lot of characters of color in Marvel who get represented in any kind of meaningful way. And while I don't think she's going to be hanging around anytime soon, because she's made it pretty clear she feels about roughly the same way now as she did before, in the Storm series, her whole issue was she felt like she was being forced to be at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, and ultimately Storm let her go. Not to mention, while she was there, she got bullied a lot, and it was one of those scenarios where, yeah, she just felt like she was better on her own, and she wanted to go back to Mexico and use her powers there to help people who actually needed her help. And Storm understood that and said, yeah, you go do you, boo. That's all you over there. Because Storm is very familiar with that type of thing. She did the very same thing that Flourish was wanting to do in Mexico. Storm did it in Africa back in the early days. Like, you go back to the original Giant Size X-Men number 1, Storm's first appearance, that's precisely what she was doing when Charles Xavier came along and whisked her away to the X-Men. So yeah, I totally get it, and I like that. I like that juxtaposition there with her and the Dark X-Men in this. But once you get outside of that, once you get outside of the stuff going on with Marisol, which is all very interesting stuff, like, she's running her own kind of like, I won't say resistance, but like a hideaway for other Mexican mutants who were attacked by Orcus, because she does bring up that there weren't a lot of gates in Mexico. So when all this stuff started going down, she rounded up all of the Mexican mutants that she could to try and keep them safe. And for the most part, she had not suffered any attacks by Orcus until the Dark X-Men showed up and led Orcus right to her. And well, technically it's not Orcus as a whole, it's just the Banff, the little pet, monstrous looking nightcrawler of the Goblin Queen from Earth 91-240. That's really the only thing they get, and that Banff is taken out pretty quickly by Feint, which I thought was a nice touch, because we actually see that Feint is digging back into her power set, that while some people may see this as brand new, I know a lot of people didn't read the Children of the Atom series by Vita Ayala, but it was I thought was actually a pretty good series. In that was when we first got a hint of who Feint was back when she was still under the name Gimmick. And during that story arc when her powers first started manifesting, the very same form we see her using here in Dark X-Men number 3 is the same form that she used when she first got her powers. She turned into this more monstrous, feral looking version of herself, and that's what she uses here, only she's doing it, I would say, almost on command. It seems like there is some kind of an emotional aspect, just kind of like how what we were just talking about with Flourish. I feel like there was a little bit more of a mood aspect involved in her powers, that maybe, you know, there's some kind of connection there. We do see that she's able to use her powers to pretty interesting effect. Like, I think even better than Mystique even. Like, she is able to not just, you know, create clothes for herself. This is not like something that, oh, it's just a part of her, but like she's actually creating equipment. She creates a mask just reactively when Flourish unleashes her, you know, paralytic spores onto the Dark X-Men. She's able to just formulate a mask right there that can completely filter out all the toxins and whatnot. So yeah, Faint, I think, is actually going to be a pretty interesting character going forward if someone will actually do anything with her once this Dark X-Men series wraps up. Another thing I thought was pretty cool here is that we also learn a little bit more about what was going on with Implate. Now, we don't know exactly why Azazel is hanging servitude over Implate's head. We don't get a straight answer on that, and I don't think it's anything that I can remember from old, you know, X-Men comics where Implate showed up. I don't recollect them having any kind of a connection to one another on any meaningful level before now. I feel like it's something that we'll learn more about in the next issue, but we do get a little bit of insight into what Implate was up to back when he first came to Krakoa, and technically we already kind of knew a little bit of this. This was all stuff that was actually addressed in a data page in the Jonathan Hickman X-Men series, but it was this deal where we knew that the Quiet Council was trying to figure out a way to let mutants like Implate, Selene, and Krakoa, who have a requirement of their power, they need to psionically feed off of people in order to survive. And it was one of those situations, and I've talked about this before a little bit, but you know, Implate was one of those mutants. He had to feed off people so that he could maintain his own life force, and the Quiet Council figured out a way to let him take a little bit from a lot of people so that way he doesn't kill anyone. But what we learn more specifically is that Implate was actually the guinea pig for how they handled Krakoa doing it, because Krakoa has to feed off psionic energy in order to live, and they couldn't just let him kill one person. They weren't going to be that cold about it, so they let Krakoa take little bitty pieces of psionic energy from everyone, and the most that a person would feel is maybe a slight headache, as opposed to, I don't know, just dying. Well, apparently Implate is how they figured that out, and I thought that was pretty cool. And while I know some people will, you know, freak out and be like, oh my god, it's, you know, Claudette and Nicole St. Croix, the little Penance twins, oh my god, they're finally on Krakoa. That's actually not true. They've actually been on Krakoa since the New Mutant series right after House of X, so this isn't the first time we've actually seen them in anything. They're just not a major focus of any of the House of X stuff. So for anyone who was wondering, no, they have been there for a while, so we don't have to worry about that either. Another thing that happens in this issue is that we also lose the character Archangel, as I talked about in the previous issue, that Angel had been transformed by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91-240 into his old death persona. And apparently he's counted as being dead even in this particular instance, but if he wasn't dead before, he is definitely dead now, because Gambit does actually blow him up in this issue. So that sucks, but I have a feeling he'll probably be back soon. There's some other stuff that's going on here with Havok that leads me to believe that we just got a tease as to how the Steve Foxe written Dead X-Men series is going to play out. So I feel like what's going to happen here is that maybe Maddie will bring him back. It's also heavily implied that Maggot's not terribly pleased with what Gambit did to Angel in this particular issue either, but just based on what we saw going on with Havok this issue, where like when he's using his powers and his costume starts to break off of him and he sees his arm and how monstrous it's become, it looks all like infected and just gross looking. I think this is the hard confirmation, or maybe not hard confirmation, but I feel like if you were a person who was still on the fence as to whether or not Havok died in the previous issue, I feel like this is gonna, lean you in the direction of believing that yes, he did in fact die in that issue. Something I'd even posited is that he did not survive the being stabbed in the throat by Albert in issue number 1, that somewhere in there he ultimately died, which is why Maddie had the reaction that she had when she was trying to heal him. So yeah, Havok, I'm pretty sure, is 100% dead, and he's only just being reanimated by Madeline Pryor. And what we've seen from the dead X-Men solicits, it shows a lot of the characters who died at the Hellfire Gala of the astonishing X-Men lineup. Characters like Cannonball, Prodigy, Jubilee, Dazzler, and so on, which honestly, those are really the only characters who actually legitimately died in the initial attack of Nimrod, other than Iceman. But yeah, I think that is where we're gonna kind of see the lead in for that. Maybe Maddie is gonna be the reason that these characters come back from the dead. Like, she's gonna use the same technique that she used on Havok and use it on them to bring them back. Though I feel like with Dazzler, it seems kind of unnecessary because technically she's supposed to be able to bring herself back, but that's neither here nor there. We also get the confirmation that while the band failed in trying to attack the Dark X-Men, that Orcus is not really happy with the Goblin Queen's results. So now she's turning her attention to something that's a little bit closer to the Dark X-Men's home, probably likely using the Banff to pull this off. What she's attempting is to manipulate Chasm. So for those unfamiliar, during the Dark Web story arc, Chasm, who for those who don't know, is actually Ben Reilly, the original Spider clone from the Spider-Man series, the Scarlet Spider, the very same Spider-Man that confused lots of Spider-Man readers back in the 90s, and a very weird subset of Marvel fans just love this guy way more than he probably deserves. He had broken bad in the early stages of Zeb Wells' Amazing Spider-Man run before they relaunched it, and he became the character Chasm, and he threw in his lot with Madeline Pryor, all in an effort to try and regain the memories that they felt they didn't have anymore. Maddie wanted the memories of Cable's childhood, something that Jean had, but Maddie didn't, despite the fact that she was the one who gave birth to him, so that was pretty wild. And Chasm, he no longer had the formative memories that he should have had being a clone of Peter Parker. So he wanted to get those, and that was pretty much what drew all that out. But in the end, Maddie actually turned on Chasm and helped the X-Men and everyone else bring him down. And she trapped him inside of the Limbo Embassy, and while he's not really factored much into this, he's showing back up now. He was actually in the first issue of Dark X-Men, but he really didn't do anything. He was still locked away because he just didn't have anything that he wanted to say. He didn't feel repentant about anything that he did, and he honestly felt like he got screwed over. And I feel like if anyone is going to want to turn on Maddie and and hurt her as much as he probably feels she hurt him, well, it would be Chasm. So I feel like, yeah, he's going to be getting back out, and I don't know if he's gonna still be on the same power levels that he was before. He did turn into the Goblin King at one point during that story arc, but that was undone. And even before that, he had gained some power levels that basically let us know that he was infinitely more powerful than he was before, even so much that Spider-Man was having trouble with him. But we don't know if any of that is still in play or not. But yeah, if he gets loose, considering how 90s and 80s era Spider-Man used to run roughshod over the X-Men, like there was a time where Spider-Man would solo the X-Men. And I know a lot of people don't want to believe that, but it was true. Like, we used to see Spider-Man, he would put hands on the X-Men back in the day. I feel like Chasm is probably going to do something similar. All in all, solid issue. We still have more questions left that have not been answered, but I'm curious to see where all this is going to go. We still have 2 more issues left of Dark X-Men before it all comes to a close. So I feel like whatever answers we're looking for in regards to Implate and Azazel and everything else, I feel like we'll get all that very soon. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, make sure you click that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on any of my videos, as well as my live streams every Saturday. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about Dark X-Men #3. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.